Hello everyone, this is Maki. Xavier made his mark as a mobile suit pilot in episode 1 of GQuuuuuuX. So how good is he as a pilot? In the second half of the first episode, the protagonist Maki took control of GQuuuuuuX and made a spectacular impression. Meanwhile, Xavier ended up damaging GQuuuuuuX without achieving victory. At first glance, he may seem like a classic weaker character who exists to highlight the protagonist's strength, a common trope in fictional narratives. But is this really the case? This time, let's take a closer look at Xavier's fighting technique in episode 1. Just a small warning. We'll be talking about some spoilers for episode 1 and beginning. I'm currently looking for people to support my channel. If you're interested, please consider becoming a member and showing your support. I prepared name badges and comment stamps just for you. Now then, let's begin to analyze Xavier's fighting skills. Xavier goes into battle under the orders of Xavier Bull. This scene provides a brief glimpse into Xavier's cold, calculating mind. Xavier is an ace pilot who fought alongside Schwarzenegger on the front lines of the war. If the pilot of the Red Gundam had actually been Schwarzenegger, would Xavier have had a chance? Even though he graduated at the top of his training academy, as Xavier himself said, this was his first real battle. It's safe to say that his chances of winning would have been slim to none. Of course, there's also the possibility that Xavier has great faith in Xavier's abilities. It'll be interesting to see how the relationship between Xavier and Xavier develops as the story progresses. From this point on, Xavier begins his mission. We begin to see the contrast between his lack of experience as a rookie and his surprisingly high piloting skills. GQuuuuuuX hides among a group of rock-like objects as he pursues the Red Gundam. At the beginning of the episode, there's a shot of a worker mobile suit transporting rocks, so it's likely that these are mined materials of some kind. Xavier makes a comment about the Minovsky particles being dispersed at a combat level density. He even remarks, is Xavier starting the operation with the same mindset as in wartime? Then GQuuuuuuX sends a light signal to the Red Gundam. It's a signal to stop. If this were a peacetime inspection mission, it would have been exactly the right move. However, Xavier had already told Xavier through the dispersal of Minovsky particles that this was a combat-level operation. As explained in the beginning, there's a particularly critical element to mobile suit battles. The side that sees the enemy first has a significant advantage. Xavier had the advantage. He saw the Red Gundam first. If he had attacked then and there, he could have attacked under favorable conditions. But by sending the signal, he threw away that advantage. This was a clear demonstration of Xavier's inexperience in real combat. Of course, Xavier's actions could also be defended. Firing military weapons without permission in a non-combat zone is a serious offense. Xavier told him this is a classified operation, but at no point did he explicitly say you are authorized to fire. If the mission log were ever submitted as evidence in a military tribunal, it would be clear that Xavier never gave an order to attack. Perhaps Xavier deliberately kept things vague in anticipation of such a possibility. When you think about it, you can't help but feel a little sorry for Xavier. From the standpoint of a soldier who maintains order, Xavier made the right decision. A light signal shoots towards the Red Gundam. The Red Gundam separates its parts and goes into battle mode. Xavier says the true signal has been ignored. That means I have no choice but to attack. While this line is meant to explain the situation to the audience, the fact that he says it out loud suggests that it was recorded as part of the mission log from inside the cockpit. This one line could become extremely important if things ever went to a military tribunal. Xavier then tries to activate the Omega Psycho Mu, but it doesn't start. With no other option, he begins the battle by manually piloting the ship with the joysticks without the Psycho Mu. He protects his body with his shield while aiming his beam rifle at the enemy. It's a stance similar to the one used by Gundam in Hathaway's Flash. According to the official design archives, the staff explained the meaning behind this pose. They said it's not a flashy pose, but considering that this is a military operation, it's a very appropriate pose. That's the intention behind the pose used for Gundam. Dramatic poses that emphasize the mobile suit's design are a signature of the Seed series. But in this scene, the way GQuuuuuuX fights shows a clear use of styling and direction conscious of the Universal Century series. GQuuuuuuX is in the prone position, facing the enemy. This posture helps reduce the self-fall failure exposed to frontal attack. Compared to flashy ace pilots, this may seem like the kind of by-the-book fighting style you'd expect from a rookie, but it also shows that Xavier is a serious principled person who sticks to the basics. But in the next moment, a flash of lightning flashes across Xavier's forehead. This is a visual cue to the audience, signaling that his new type abilities have awakened. At this moment, Xavier is looking straight ahead. His entire focus is forward. However, immediately after this new type activation, he senses an incoming attack from behind. And then he dodges the beam attack. It's an extraordinary ability. Let's take a look at the battles of the pilots of the White Base, the warship featured in First Gundam. Admiral Ray, who pilots the Gundam, often gets the spotlight, but the other pilots are also highly skilled. Kai Shiden, for example, is often acknowledged in spin-offs, with comments such as Admiral's record is so far above others that Kai tends to be overlooked, but he too possesses almost monstrous skills. Kai was unable to dodge the attacks of the Brawl Brawl, piloted by Xavier, and ended up damaging the leg of his gun cannon. Even someone like Kai, who could be considered an ace pilot, had trouble dodging attacks from remote-controlled terminals. There's another example, Kamiyu Biden, the protagonist of Zeta Gundam, which is the sequel to First Gundam. Admiral, the former protagonist, gives Kamiyu some advice. Grow eyes in the back of your head. It's a famously vague and instinctive suggestion that fans often cite as frustratingly unhelpful. Kamiyu is understandably confused by Admiral's cryptic advice. But what about Xavier at this moment? He senses the attack from behind and reacts skillfully. And there's no warning sound in the cockpit, no lock-on warning or anything. Later in the episode, when GQuuuuuuX loses his beam rifle, there's a scene where there are red lights flashing and warning sounds in the cockpit. But during this beat attack, there's no such alarm. This strongly suggests that the attack came from outside the sensor range. He sensed the enemy purely through his new type ability and took evasive action. It's fair to say that Xavier is truly a man with eyes in the back of his head. But this is where Xavier's lack of experience shows. He aims his beam rifle in the direction where the beam attack came from, but then another beam, fired from a different angle, destroys his rifle. Xavier had already seen that 2 beds were equipped. He also witnessed both being fired. Even though he visually confirmed the state of the enemy's equipment, he was so fixated on the direction of the first attack that he failed to react to the second attack from a different angle. Now let's talk about the pilot of the Red Gundam, who becomes a point of curiosity. In beginning, Shuji pilots the Red Gundam later in the story and teams up with Maki in the clan battle. So is Shuji the one who pilots the Red Gundam here? However, the pilot of the Red Gundam that fights Xavier is clearly extremely skilled. Even in this short battle, they are completely outmaneuvering Xavier. If the opponent was just an average soldier or civilian, it wouldn't be surprising if he was shot down right away. But Shuji hasn't shown that kind of overwhelming skill. He's never shown the level of talent required to dominate an opponent's clan battle. So what's going on here? In anime, it's quite common to see characters with dual personalities or hidden identities. Could Shuji be one of them? Or is it possible that there's more than one Red Gundam in mass production? The Red Gundam attacks from a burst of light. It's unclear if the light is just for dramatic effect, or if it's meant to show the pilot using a light source like the sun to hide his approach. In First Gundam, there's a scene where Ammo Ray approaches an enemy while being hidden by the sun's glare. Maybe this is a tribute to that moment. Xavier reacts to the Red Gundam's attack. He activates his beam saber while defending with his shield. This is the same type of attack that overwhelmed Zaku earlier. The military police Zaku was, of course, piloted by a military police officer. Technically, a trained soldier. But Xavier manages to respond to the attack in a way that those soldiers couldn't. Although he is a rookie, he has managed to act more accurately than regular soldiers. However, the pilot of the Red Gundam is even quicker in his judgment. As the beam sabers collide and sparks fly, the enemy uses the light from the collision to distract him, then follows up with a kick. You can see that the Red Gundam's legs are hidden by the beam sabers and the Red Gundam's body. The impact causes GQuuuuuX's arm to shift significantly, exposing the Red Gundam's head from behind its shield. It starts firing with its head-mounted Vulcan cannons. Realizing that he won't be able to block it in time, Xavier raises his arm to protect the head camera. A moment later, he uses the shield to cover the cockpit area. Instead of relying on his shield alone, Xavier makes smart use of the surrounding terrain. As he moves, he positions himself so that a border comes between GQuuuuuX and the enemy's broken line of fire. He analyzes the environment and uses it to gain an advantage in battle. Once hidden behind the rock, Xavier discards the beam saber, which has been damaged by the Vulcan fire. Moments later, the saber explodes. If the bullets hadn't been blocked by the rock, it would likely have detonated at close range. Even though Xavier is under pressure from his opponent, he still manages to avoid a fatal blow. The Red Gundam, having gained some distance, charges in for another attack. It swings its beam saber repeatedly, but Xavier manages to block each strike. While his inexperience still shows, it's clear that Xavier's piloting skills are high standards. We mentioned earlier how the military police Zaku was taken down instantly. Again, we see a strong example of Xavier having excellent technical skills. Even after losing GQuuuuuX's weapons, Xavier initiates a ramming maneuver. It's not just a simple body slam. He slams the Red Gundam into a boulder. It almost looks like he's trying to knock the pilot unconscious. What may seem like a desperate move actually shows that he's still piloting with intent and a clear goal. However, both GQuuuuuX and the Red Gundam end up in a space colony. The beat of the Red Gundam begin to approach. Xavier analyzes the situation and says you don't seem like the kind of outlaw who would use beam weapons inside a colony. Beam weapons are extremely destructive and can easily penetrate the walls of a colony. That's why using beam weapons inside a space colony is a serious international violation. Xavier, gripping the control sticks, mumbles, "If I could control them with the Psycho-Mu, I'd be able to react much more precisely." It's also surprising that Xavier can fight well even when piloted normally without using the Psycho-Mu. He's not just a new type, he's also a pilot with excellent piloting skills. Then one of the bits flies towards Maki and Niran. If you look closely, you can see that their bodies are caught between the barrel and the thruster frame of the bit. If the angle had been even slightly off, they could have been killed. It's unclear whether this was just a coincidence or the result of the Red Gundam pilot's control. If it was intentional, then the pilot's skill is nothing short of amazing. Xavier grabs the incoming bit with both hands. This is an incredible feat for a pilot who makes his first appearance in episode 1. Suletta, the protagonist of the previous anime which from Maki, also made contact with remote attack units, touching them or kicking them, but only during the final battle. Then Xavier swings the bit in his hands and smashes it into the other incoming bit. At that moment, he grabs the barrel itself and spins it around. If the beam had fired at that moment, GQuuuuuX would have taken a direct hit at point-blank range. Xavier probably made this move based on his earlier judgment. The enemy pilot is not the kind of outlaw who would use beam weapons inside a space colony. Grabbing a piece by hand is impressive enough, but using it to destroy another is a truly remarkable tactic. Once again, Xavier demonstrates his excellent piloting skills. As he destroys the bit, he also uses his shield to protect the cockpit and cameras as he retreats from the area. He doesn't pause for relief after disabling the weapon. He immediately moves on to the next action. GQuuuuuX charges into the Red Gundam, but the momentum sends it crashing down. The shield of the Red Gundam falls towards Maki and Niran. But the Red Gundam quickly reaches out and uses its hand to protect them. This moment has become a bit of a joke among fans. In the final scene of beginning, Xavier, who says the one driving the Red Gundam, is not sure. However, some fans jokingly insist no, that pilot is definitely sure. They base this on a scene in Shah's counterattack where Gus, in a moment of jealousy, says Colonel Shah is the kind of man who falls in love with young girls. So when the Red Gundam leaves the battle to protect two young girls, fans half jokingly say, well, using Guinea's logic, that pilot must be sure. Meanwhile, Xavier struggles with a malfunction in GQuuuuuX's control system. It's a moment that could easily be overlooked, but it's actually quite interesting. A similar situation happened in First Gundam, where the Gundam couldn't keep up with Admiral Ray's piloting and sparks flew from the joysticks. From this point of view, we can see that even as a character in the first episode, Xavier has already demonstrated a level of skill comparable to that of previous Gundam protagonists. Realizing that the military police have discovered the battle between the Red Gundam and GQuuuuuX and are approaching, Xavier fires a small grenade and retreats. And so the very first mobile suit battle between two Gundams comes to an end. How has your impression of Xavier changed? Does he still seem like a somewhat unreliable rookie? Or has he become a surprisingly strong pilot with remarkable skills in your eyes? What kind of person will Xavier become as the story progresses? Will he become a reliable leader for Almaty? Or will he stand in Almaty's way as a powerful enemy? If he ends up becoming the protagonist's trusted mentor, that might actually be a little worrying. In anime, such characters often meet an alien and leave the stage. If Xavier were to die and a new Xavier were to appear, some viewers might be reminded of Rei Aoyanomi from the Evangelion series. Whatever path he takes, we won't be able to take our eyes off his story. Thank you for watching until the end. See you in the next episode.